Revealed, the incredible journey of a poor orphan, forced into an unexpected life-changing battle. Ethan stood outside the small diner where he worked, the neon sign buzzing softly in the twilight. He felt the weight of the world pressing down on his skinny shoulders, but he held his head high, trying to hide the ache of being alone. As an orphan, life had been a series of struggles. Distant relatives took him in as if he were an unwelcome guest, never quite embracing him as family. Yet, in that moment, beneath the flickering lights, he could almost hear the echoes of hope in the empty streets, longing for a chance to thrive. He spent countless hours pouring coffee and flipping burgers, each shift binding him closer to the community that often felt like the only family he had left. Ethan's heart raced as he served regulars, their laughter intertwining with his dreams. He longed for a future where he wasn't merely scraping by, a future where he could carve a name for himself, not just a shadow of an obligation. One ordinary shift took a turn, the kind that brings life to a grinding halt. With a furrowed brow, his best friend Ryan rushed in, face pale and frantic. "Ethan. My folks, they got an eviction notice." The words sliced through Ethan like a knife. Not just Ryan, his best buddy for years, but a family deeply rooted in each other, a family whose struggles mirrored the heartbeat of the town. Inside Ethan, emotions clashed. The anchors of loyalty pulled him one way, while the fear of losing all he held dear threatened to drown him another. He could almost see the vision of his friends being broken apart, just like their homes snatched away by wealthy outsiders eager to gentrify every inch of their once thriving, vibrant community. Therefore, he made a decision. Ethan rallied the people, veterans who shared war stories, elderly neighbors who remembered the simple joys, and local activists who refused to let the past be written over. They gathered in the old community center, where the scent of stale coffee mingled with nostalgia, creating an atmosphere thick with memories and resolve. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each meeting sparked a flicker of community spirit, igniting the same warmth that once held them together. But with it, doubt lingered like a shadow. Could they really fight against the deep-rooted prejudices of officials who dismissed their voices? Their muted anger simmered beneath the surface until the next meeting erupted. Ethan stood, words trembling on the edge of his tongue as local officials belittled their struggle, their faces stony with indifference. Foolhardy, they called him, as uncertain murmurings fell over the crowd behind him. As tension reached its peak, Ethan found courage he never knew he had. No more silence. His voice surged like a wave, desperation spilling into hope. The room seemed to hold its breath, everyone was watching. Could his words uplift the community, or would they fall flat against the gnarled roots of inequality planted deep within? Surrounded by uncertainty, Ethan stood firm on the precipice of change. It felt like a battle for not just a roof over their heads but the very fabric of who they were. He took a deep breath, preparing to fight against the tide of despair, wondering if he truly had the strength to make a difference. As silence enveloped the room, Ethan felt the weight of every gaze pinning him down. Heart pounding, he could almost hear the thoughts of his friends echoing in the still air, hopes, fears, and the desperate wish for a brighter tomorrow. A flicker of determination ignited within him. He couldn't let them down. Not now. Listen. He continued, voice rising above the murmurs. If we do nothing, we lose everything. This community, our friends and families, they deserve a chance. We need to fight. For all of us. He could see their faces light up as they leaned in, clinging to the possibility of unity, of strength in numbers. The local officials shifted uncomfortably, their earlier smugness wavering under the weight of Ethan's passion. Voices began to stir. Old Mr. Thompson, the retired school teacher, stood up slowly, the years evident in his hunched shoulders but a fire igniting in his weary eyes. Ethan's right. We have fought harder battles than this. We won. Be silenced. His words struck a chord, reverberating against the walls that had so often contained their dreams. Suddenly, what started as a mere whisper of resistance blossomed into a wave of voices rising in agreement. Yes. We can do this. Don't let them take our homes. With each person standing up, the resolve grew stronger. Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes as he watched individual struggles morph into a collective roar. It wasn't just about their homes anymore, it was about dignity, identity, and the future they all shared. As the energy in the room crackled with renewed hope, someone proposed a plan: organized protests, letters to the editor, petitions, everything they could muster to challenge the eviction notices. The air thickened with an electric anticipation. The group was no longer fractured but fused with determination. In the days that followed, every waking moment was consumed with their cause. Ethan spent late nights crafting speeches, meeting with local leaders, gathering signatures for their petitions. They knocked on doors, returning with not just support but stories, narratives of families who had fought similar battles, generations who refused to be defeated. But every small victory came with its own weight, and every shout of encouragement was shadowed by a feeling of impending doom. The threat of eviction loomed over them like a dark cloud, and Ethan often sat up late, wrestling with doubt. Was this enough? Would they really be heard? Just when their resolve began to waver, a lifeline materialized. A local news reporter, intrigued by their plight, came knocking at the community center one evening. "I want to hear your story," she said, camera at the ready, eagerness sparkling in her eye. The flicker of hope ignited again inside Ethan. Flashing lights lit up the room as interviews unfolded. The warmth of community enveloped them, leaving little doubt that their fight was worthy. It felt monumental. Each word spilled painted their reality, spreading like wildfire across the town. But as the initial rush of hope settled, Ethan received a chilling phone call, an ominous warning from one of the officials. "You're playing a dangerous game," the voice hissed, laced with threats. A wave of fear washed over him, the weight of this new burden pressing heavily on his chest. How far could they push back? What would be the cost of their battle for dignity? As he looked out at the town rooftops from the diner's window that night, Ethan felt a storm brewing, and he realized this fight was only just beginning. Would they be able to withstand the pressure, or would the forces against them prove too formidable? With courage stitched into his heart, he knew one thing: it had to be worth it. For Ryan. For his friends. For everyone who had stood with him. The next rally was set. And Ethan wondered, as he closed his eyes that night, how the world would respond to the cries of a community standing together. Would the tides turn in their favor, or were they all about to face the storm of adversity head-on? Ethan woke to a cacophony of sounds outside his window: car horns, distant laughter, and the near-constant chatter that filled their little town. Today was the rally, the moment they would showcase their fight to the world. He felt a flutter of nerves in his stomach, but it was quickly drowned out by the thrill of purpose. He knew they were ready. But deep inside, he could feel the ominous weight of that threatening phone call lingering like a storm cloud over his head. A quick shower washed away the remnants of last night's fears, and he dressed in his favorite t-shirt, the one that read "Together Stronger." As he stepped outside, the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a warm glow, igniting a flicker of optimism. The air smelled of fresh coffee, baked goods from the diner, and something else entirely: a sense of determination. He met up with Ryan, who was already pacing with excitement. "I can feel the energy," Ryan said, his eyes wider than ever. "This is our moment, Ethan. They're not ready for what's coming." Ethan grinned, his heart swelling with pride. "Yeah, we're not backing down today." They made their way to the park, where makeshift banners decorated the scene like wildflowers in a field. Bright colors and unyielding slogans set against a backdrop of community members milling about, some exchanging hugs, others preparing pamphlets, and a few reluctantly placing their hopes into a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. Mr. Thompson stood at the podium, his frail hands gripping the edges. This is it, my friends. Let them hear us. He announced, his voice quaking only slightly. As more people gathered, Ethan stood at the forefront, taking a deep breath to calm his racing heart. Each face in the crowd echoed his own struggles, their dreams interwoven by the common fabric of their lives. With every chant, every cheer, Ethan could almost feel the weight lifting inches higher until it blasted off into the blue sky. But then, as if a dark shadow had fallen over the joy, he saw them officials huddled at the edge of the park, their expressions unreadable. A knot twisted in his stomach. It was the same officials who had come to steal their futures. Their presence was a stark reminder that they were still fighting against a formidable opponent. Today, we fight for our homes, for our lives. Ethan shouted into the crowd, his voice steadying. The roar of allegiance mixed with uncertainty filled the air, a harmony of hope and fear. But deep down, he questioned if it were enough. Could their united voices truly shift the tides against such powerful players? As the protest marched forward, with chants echoing through the streets, Ethan's thoughts turned to the threats he received. Was he putting everyone in danger by standing up? What if the pushback brought even more wrath from the officials? He could feel the doubt creeping back in, but he pushed it aside. This was bigger than him. Halfway through the rally, a dramatic scene unfolded. A group of counter-protesters appeared at the far end of the park. Tension sparked in the air, and Ethan felt the breath hitch in his throat. He watched as the officials joined them, fanning the flames of division. Faces of anger and determination clashed with those who just wanted peace. Ethan shot a glance at Ryan. "What do we do?" he asked, uncertainty lacing his words. "Stick to the message." Ryan responded, fear flickering behind his eyes. "We can't let them drown us out." As both sides began to shout and clash, Ethan found himself standing at the edge, the epicenter of a battle between dreams and despair. This was not how he envisioned their moment would unfold. In that heated moment, he remembered why they were here. He took a step forward, heart pounding. "Together!" he shouted, his voice piercing through the chaos. "Together we are strong." Eyes turned towards him, catching their breath. He felt the hope swell once more like a rising tide, pulling the entire community back into unity. But the counter-protesters pressed on, louder and more aggressive. Faces twisted in defiance. Ethan needed to act, to reach deep within and find what it meant to fight for what was right. In the eye of the storm, Ethan felt the fate of his community resting on his shoulders. Would they rise to this challenge, or would the mounting pressures of conflict tear them apart? As he opened his mouth to rally them, the answer hung in the air, ready to unfold. Ethan's words hung in the air, heavy with expectation. He could see the confusion giving way to solidarity as people started to chant his call. "Together we are strong," grew louder and more fervent, a wave washing over the crowd, pushing back against the discontent that had threatened to engulf them. The energy shifted, and instead of chaos, a new resolve formed. Faces that had been turned toward anger now softened. The crowd swelled around him, eyes brightening with renewed determination. They were in this together. But as he looked out, Ethan's heart raced, realizing that being a beacon was one thing, being the leader was something else entirely. "Let us show them who we are," Ethan shouted, feeling the electricity of the moment coursing through him. It wasn't about him anymore, it was about all of them. The crowd's response surged like a tide, carried by voices that were once filled with doubt. They began to march forward, chanting, "Fighting for our homes. Fighting for our lives." As they advanced, Ethan's gaze swept over the sea of people, families, friends, and elders who once felt alone in their struggles. This was powerful. This was home. A sudden movement broke his concentration. A group of counter-protesters had moved closer, their hostile shouts ringing out like battle cries. "Scum! Parasites!" They spat, and just hearing those words made Ethan's stomach churn. He drew a deep breath to steady himself. They had been called worse, and yet here they stood, unwavering. His heart sank as he saw a few of the familiar faces from his neighborhood among the counter-protesters, and he felt an ache for the misunderstanding that had drawn them into a false alliance with the officials. Ryan, ever perceptive, caught Ethan's eye. "We can't let them intimidate us. We have to keep pushing." His voice was firm, but Ethan could see the worry in his friend's eyes. What if they were more than just words? What if this turned violent? Ethan felt a flicker of fear, but it ignited something deeper within, a drive to protect what he loved. "You're right," he nodded decisively. "Let us come together." He called out again, rallying the crowd. "Show them that love conquers hate." With renewed chants echoing as a shield, they advanced together, creating a wall against the barrage of hostility. Suddenly, one of the counter-protesters stepped forward aggressively, aiming a hostile finger directly at Ethan. "You don't belong here. Leave while you can." Recognition washed over Ethan in waves. This was Mike, the guy who had played baseball in the neighborhood. How had they come to this point? "We all belong, Mike." Ethan shouted back, calling on memories of laughter and Little League games. "This is for all of us." For a brief moment, the tension felt palpable, time stretching like elastic. Something flickered across Mike's features, doubt maybe, before being squashed by the mob around him. For every voice that echoed Ethan's, the dissent from the counter-protesters grew louder. "Ethan!" Ryan called out suddenly, panic rising in his voice. "They're getting ready to push." Ethan could feel the pulse of desperation rising among his friends. The crowd was holding firm, determination painted on their faces, but fear gripped the air and time seemed to freeze. Would they stand strong or crumble? "Hold the line!" Ethan bellowed, sensing the moment was critical. "We are here for truth." But the protests began to blend into chaos. Shouting, pushing, angry gestures all surged forward like a wave crashing against a fragile shore. Ethan's heart raced, and doubt wormed its way back in. Was this all going to end in violence? Would everything they fought for get lost in the fray? He clenched his fists, taking one resolute step forward. "We are not just bodies in this fight, we are a community." And then, just when it felt like everything might spiral out of control, he noticed a young woman at the front. Fresh tears stained her cheeks, but determination shone through her eyes. "Together!" she shouted, raising her sign high. The crowd echoed her cry, and slowly, like a daisy breaking through the frost, hope began to bloom. As voices united in that singular moment, Ethan knew they were on the precipice of a change. The air felt electric, charged with the power of their shared purpose. Still, the clash loomed ahead. Was their unity enough to weather the storm? Would the fear that lay just below the surface erupt, or could they transform this moment into something more? As he strained to hear the voices around him, Ethan felt the weight of something monumental yet to come, not just for them, but for the future they envisioned. The rally was unraveling, and the question loomed, was this really just the beginning or the end? As he squared his shoulders, the answer hung suspended, thick with possibility. Ethan's heart pounded aggressively in his chest, each beat echoing the collective thrum of the crowd. He could feel the tension radiating from his friends, their faces cast in shadows of fear and determination. It was a battle of wills, and every moment felt like a mile. As the shouting intensified, Ethan caught a glimpse of the counter-protesters preparing to charge, their eyes metallic with fury. There was rage there, yes, but also a flicker of confusion, a humanity that connected them. His voice trembled slightly as he shouted, "We're not your enemies. We all want the same thing." Suddenly, a loud crack splintered through the air, followed by a screaming child's cry from the back of the crowd. The innocent sound shattered the tension like glass. Ethan's heart dropped. Fear rippled through the assembly like an electric shock. He turned to see a mother clutching her child, her face a mask of panic. That single moment reminded him of everything that was at stake. The stakes were high. Lives were intertwined in this fight for dignity. Let us create a safe space. Ethan called urgently, pushing through the surge to reach the frightened mother. Everyone, we need to make a circle. Protect the vulnerable. Hands moved automatically as people heard his call, forming a human chain around the mother and child. An unseen force seemed to pull people together, no longer just protesting but becoming a shield for one another. As Ethan approached, he could see the child's eyes, wide and wet but shining bright beneath all that fear. "Hey there, buddy," Ethan said softly, kneeling down to meet the boy's gaze directly. "You're safe with us. We're all fighting for a better world, okay?" The child nodded hesitantly, reaching for his mother's hand. Ethan caught the mother's eye and saw gratitude mixed with terror. They were all searching for hope. And just like that, when optimism felt fleeting, another voice broke through the fray. "Stand tall. Stand proud." A tall man, one of the leaders from the local community center, stepped forward, igniting spark after spark in the hearts of those around him. "Together, we are stronger than fear," he continued, eyes raging passionately. Ethan felt each phrase nestle deep in his chest. The tension shifted again, bolstered by a shared recognition of their purpose. He could see a few faces from the counter-protesters begin to falter, as though the words of hope seeped into the cracks of their anger. Could it really be enough? Yet in that very moment, a loud shout from the opposite side filled the air. "You all are traitors. You should be ashamed." The words cut deeply. For a split second, doubt crept back into Ethan's mind. The rallying cries of support seemed fragile now, and the storm around them kept brewing. Could this moment of unity withstand the weight of hatred? Ethan straightened up, drawing energy from the warmth of the group surrounding him. A newfound clarity sparked within him. "If we retreat now, we lose." His voice rang through the chaos, a clarion call. Now is not the time to break apart. We need each other. The crowd responded with renewed chants, a pulse of determination coursing through their joined hands. "Fighting for our homes. Fighting for our lives." They cried, the urgency swelling to a fever pitch. Ethan felt a thrill rise in him, a flicker of strength igniting in his bones. But just as the cries reached their peak, an unexpected movement broke the barrier. A loud crash echoed as a barricade fell, sending a wave of panic rippling through the throng. Ethan's throat tightened. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, and he could see chaos starting to spill over like an uncontrolled wave. This was the moment. Would they allow unity to be drowned in division? Or could they stand together, stronger than the pull of fear? Ethan raised his voice once more, louder than ever, as hope twinkled in the depths of uncertainty. What kind of story do we want to tell? One of division and hate? Or one of courage and love? He stood firm, feeling the weight of their collective gaze upon him. But before anyone could respond, he realized, the moment of truth was upon them. Would they change the narrative laid before them, or would they let it slip away in the chaos? Ethan's heart raced as he looked into the faces of those surrounding him, a mix of fierce determination and palpable fear. The crowd heaved with energy, but the sudden crash had roused a wildness that threatened to tear them apart. Someone nearby screamed, and that simple sound was enough to send his resolve shuddering. His mind raced. Should they brace for confrontation? Or could they cultivate the fragile unity they had just found? The counter-protesters were advancing, their faces twisted with anger. Hurling insults, they seemed to feed off one another, galvanized by the chaotic energy that filled the air like smoke. "Together, we stand," yelled the man from the community center. "Let them see our strength." Ethan felt a surge of hope at those words. They needed to stand firm, but would it really be enough to push back against an oncoming tide of fury? "Keep going," he called out, his voice cracking but unwavering. "Show them we're stronger together." With renewed vigor, the crowd lifted their voices in unison, chanting in rhythm like a heartbeat. "Together. Together." In that moment, time seemed to stretch out. Ethan locked eyes with a woman on the fringes of the counter-protest. She looked as scared as he felt, yet also uncertain. What lay behind her fury? What losses had she suffered? The shared humanity of it twisted in his chest. Just as he was about to take a step forward, a flash of violence erupted from somewhere near the center of the commotion. Someone had hurled something, a bottle. A rock. It struck the ground with a harsh thud, and the chaos multiplied, ricocheting back to him like a slap in the face. Ethan's instincts kicked in. Hold your ground. He shouted, adrenaline flooding his system. The human chain felt fragile now, a tightrope walk over a chasm of anger. He turned back to the woman, desperate to bridge the gap. This isn't the answer. We're all fighting for something better. The fire in the air seemed to flicker for a moment at his words. Her clenched fists relaxed slightly, doubt lingering in her eyes. What better? For whom? A voice bellowed from the ranks of counter-protesters. You think we want to hurt children? We've lost everything. The raw emotion behind the words cracked through the superficial barriers between the two sides. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. I know what it's like to feel lost. But fighting won't bring back what we lost. It won't heal our wounds. Those words hung in the air, a challenge and a plea. The crowd stilled yet again, breaths held like a fragile truce. But tension simmered just below the surface, an unrelenting force waiting to erupt. In the fragile quiet that followed, he felt the connection, however tenuous, that stretched across the divide. One glance at the mother still shielding her child filled him with a flicker of resolve. If chaos was the loudest voice, then love and understanding had to be louder still. We can rise above this. Ethan cried, his heart racing with every word. We're more than this moment. Let us build a future, not just for ourselves but for those who come after us. As his voice echoed, he hoped that it would seep into hearts like rain into thirsty soil. Could they nurture something beautiful from so much pain? But just when he thought their hearts were open, he noticed a shift within the crowd, a ripple of doubt spreading like wildfire. It was brewing again, like the thunder before a storm. What do we do now? Someone murmured, the fear palpable. Ethan clenched his fists. We fight for a voice that carries hope. He asserted. But beneath his bravado, doubt gnawed at him. Would they trust each other? Or were they destined to let fear drag them back into the shadows? As his gaze swept across the crowd, he knew the answer slept in their hands yet so much hung in the balance. Where would they go from here? What would be the choice that would change their lives forever? Ethan's breath hung heavy in the air as he faced the crowd, uncertain of how they would respond to his words. The shifting expressions, a mosaic of fear and determination, weighed on him like a leaden shroud. Just as he felt the moment teetering toward disaster, a young girl stepped forward, her wide eyes brimming with innocent courage. Are we really together? She asked, voice steady despite the din around her. Her small stature wove a stark contrast against the tumult of grown adults who stood trembling with fury and doubt. Ethan nodded, his heart swelling. Yes, we are. Look around you. We're all here because we believe in something better. But it hurts. She wailed, her voice breaking. People are angry, and it's scary. A few heads turned, their focus shifting from confrontation to compassion. It was a spark, a flicker of light cutting through the storm. He could see it in their eyes, the slightest glimmer of realization that they shared the girl's pain. Life hurts sometimes, sweetheart, he replied softly, kneeling to meet her gaze directly. But we have to choose hope over anger, love over hate. Together, we can turn the hurt into something that heals us. A murmur passed through the crowd, uncertainty giving way to surges of empathy. They were torn between their fears and the instinct to grasp onto the promise of unity that hung like a dream just out of reach. As he straightened up, Ethan felt renewed strength. Let us talk to each other. Let us share our stories, our fears. We can't heal without understanding the pain we each carry. Will you speak with me? Slowly, a ripple spread as people began to lower their voices. The mixed emotions simmered in the air, raw and vulnerable, but also a testament to their shared humanity. "All right," came a begrudging voice from the counter-protest. "I'm willing to listen, but you'd better be ready to hear what I have to say." Ethan felt hope, a tentative bridge being built, but it was also a challenge. "We're all ready to listen," he called back, voice steady. "We need to know what drives us, what we fear, what we love." He pivoted slightly, his gaze searching for the woman he had locked eyes with earlier. "You too. Let us build this together." He gestured her way, inviting her into the conversation. The woman hesitated but then stepped closer, drawn in by the gravity of the moment. "I lost my home," she finally spoke, her voice raw yet fierce. "Everything I had. We're fighting for our lives, the lives of our children." With every voice that followed, the atmosphere shifted. Stories flooded out, lives intertwined with grief, anger, and desperation. An elderly man shared tales of loss and resilience, a teenager spoke of dreams overshadowed by despair. For every painful revelation, Ethan felt the weight lift, the isolation dissolve. They spoke of love, of shared dreams, and those who motivated them to stand here today. Yet even amidst the healing words, Ethan sensed a storm brewing anew. Some faces hardened at the mention of their struggles, as if defending their pain was more important than the connection they were beginning to forge. "Why must we hurt one another because we are hurting ourselves?" he implored, desperation rising. "We can disagree, but we must do this with respect." As his words hung in the air, the crowd's energy shifted. Where it had felt like a battleground moments before, it now shimmered with possibilities. But just as Ethan felt this fragile bond strengthening, he heard a voice shout from the back, a menacing tone that shattered the moments of unity. "Enough with the words. We want action, not fairy tales." The crowd stirred, uncertainty creeping back like a shadow. Ethan's heart raced again, panic clawing at him. What do we do now? He thought, desperate for reassurance, battling doubt yet again. Would they falter or rise to the challenge? In the midst of turbulence, he caught the girl's gaze once more. Her eyes spoke volumes, imploring him to keep fighting. What choice would they make? Would they hold their ground or let fear dictate their response? Ethan's stomach churned as murmurs grew louder, mixed with anger and doubt. The girl's small frame felt like a beacon in the chaos, but even her light seemed threatened by the rising tension. His desperation pushed him to take another step forward. "Action," he shouted, trying to cut through the noise. "What kind of action do we really need? Do we strike at each other, or do we fight for something bigger?" The challenge hung heavy in the air. Ethan could see faces sour at the thought of introspection when all they wanted was to lash out. He felt the anxiety smash against his chest, a storm threatening to tear apart the delicate fabric of their connection. "We can turn our pain into something stronger. We don't have to go backwards," he continued, determination breaking through his timid facade. "We have stories of survival right here. Let us take that energy, that anger, and build something meaningful." He looked to the woman who had shared about her loss, hoping she'd jump in. But she remained silent, her expression a mix of sorrow and uncertainty. Would she join him, or stay cocooned in her hurt? Suddenly, the voice from the back cut in again, sharper this time. "You think words can save us? We need to rise up." The man stepped into view, his face twisted in anger. "We need to make them listen." The crowd shifted uneasily. A wave of fear rippled through the audience, and Ethan's heart sank. "Listen to me." Another voice called from the side. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, her hands trembling but steady. "We've already lost too much. We can't lose our humanity too." A fighting spirit ignited within Ethan. Could this be the moment that changed everything? Yes. Please, let us not just react. Let us think. Action doesn't always mean fighting. It can mean standing tall, together. He felt an electric connection with the woman as she spoke. Her vulnerability was palpable. People began nodding, drawn into the idea of unity over violence. This was the tender moment they had longed for. And yet, Ethan could sense apprehension bubbling beneath the surface. Fear of vulnerability mingled with the urge to strike out. "There's a lot at stake," he said carefully, searching for the right words. "We cannot let our pain dictate our actions. We need to lift each other up." But the man at the back couldn't contain himself. "Lift us up? Tell me how that stops the loss. How does that rebuild what is broken?" Ethan swallowed hard, determination surging again. "What if it starts with us? What if every story shared here today becomes a step toward healing? Together, we can change the narrative." The crowd resided in a swirling tide of emotions, anger and tenderness intermingling like clouds in a stormy sky. Ethan glanced at the young girl, her expression filled with hope. He took a deep breath, clutching on to that flicker of hope. "Let us find a way to showcase our stories. Let us turn pain into power. Will you share the real truth of our lives instead of letting others define us?" His voice rang out, an unwavering call to action, and for the first time that night, silence descended, punctuated only by hearts racing and breaths held. Just as he felt the crowd leaning in, the man shouted again, voice booming, "And what if they don't listen?" Ethan felt the warmth drain from him. The fear was palpable now. What if they didn't listen? What if they continued to turn away from the truth, even after they shared their stories? In that critical moment, he had to make a decision. Would he hold their attention, or would he lose it all over again? The weight of his next words could hold the fate of this gathering. A silence enveloped the crowd, raw expectation hanging in the air. Could change truly take place here? Or was this simply another moment destined to slip into chaos? Ethan's heart raced, caught in the tension. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment envelop him like a heavy blanket. The frightened faces in front of him, their uncertainty, their pain threatened to suffocate him. He clenched his fists, drawing on the strength of his emotions. "Even if they don't listen," he said, his voice steady yet passionate, "we have to speak. It's not just about being heard, it's about sharing who we are. If we let our stories go untold, we will remain invisible, lost in the dark. But if we shine a light on our pain, our truths, we can't help but be seen." He glanced around, searching for understanding in the eyes that surrounded him. The young girl shifted, her gaze widening slightly. She seemed to draw strength from his words, and Ethan's determination swelled. "We're not just victims," he called out with fervor. "Our stories are laced with resilience. With love. With the strength to endure. It's time to share that strength. We will not be silenced." The crowd was still. Some nodded, a quiet acceptance rippling through the group. His heart fluttered with hope, but he could still sense skepticism lurking like a shadow in the corner. "Who's going to start?" he asked, scanning the crowd. "Who's brave enough to share? I promise you won't be alone." Moments ticked by like the tolling of a clock. And then, a voice broke through the hush. "I will." It was the woman who had spoken earlier about her loss. Her hands trembled, but a flicker of resolve lit her eyes. "It feels like my pain is too much, like it could swallow me whole. But I've come to understand that pain can also connect us, share the weight." As she spoke, something shifted. The murmurs of the crowd softened, blending into a feeling of unity. A collective breath released. "I lost my son a year ago to senseless violence," she continued, her voice cracking yet firm. "For a long time, I felt alone in this grief. I thought no one could understand what it meant to have a part of your heart torn away. But in this struggle, I've learned that there are others that feel this too." Tears sparkled in her eyes, and Ethan felt a pang in his chest. Yet, there was power in her vulnerability. As if by opening her heart, she widened the door for others to step inside. One by one, voices emerged. A man who lost his job because of discrimination. A woman who fled from an abusive relationship. A teenager whose dreams of college seemed crushed beneath suffocating financial despair. Each story wove a thread, creating a tapestry of shared experiences. With every word, the energy in the room shifted. They were stepping into the light, together, shedding the shame and fear that kept them in the shadows. They were standing tall, no longer alone. Ethan watched, awestruck as emotions overflowed. Tears flowed freely, but so did laughter, acceptance, and even a spark of joy. There was healing in the vulnerability, and he could feel its potency electrifying the air. Just as he thought the communal warmth could not increase, the angry man pushed forward again. This is nice and all, but for what? What's the endgame? Ethan's adrenaline surged one last time. The endgame is not just surviving, it's thriving. Together, we can fight against the narrative that tries to keep us quiet. We're more than our pain. We are a collective force. As if the crowd ignited with newfound energy, people began to cheer. Excitement rippled through them like wildfire, sparking smiles against the backdrop of sorrow. But just as hope began to flourish, the man stood firm, challenging once more. And what if we still fail? What then? Ethan froze, heart pounding. That question hung in the air, the shadow looming over the blossoming hope. What if they did fail? What if they couldn't reach those who needed to hear their message the most? His mind raced. He needed to answer, to push past the doubts. But was he ready to confront the weight of that fear? In the silence that followed, he could feel the eyes of the crowd fix on him, waiting for the response that would seal their fate. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on him, each person waiting for a spark of hope. He inhaled deeply, heart racing. There was no room for doubt now, this was their moment. What if we fail? Ethan replied, voice steady yet filled with conviction. Then we pick ourselves up and fight harder. His words rang out like a battle cry. The emotion in the crowd began to swell again, voices intertwining with eagerness and tenacity. Together. Together. They chanted, fueling the fire igniting within each heart. Because this isn't just about today or tomorrow. It's about the legacy we leave behind. Ethan's voice lifted, echoing off the park walls. It's about showing future generations what it means to stand with love, even when anger wants to divide us. If we fail, we learn. But if we succeed, we create a ripple effect, one that can change lives. Tears filled his eyes as he witnessed the shift in the crowd. Fear was melting away, revealing a community full of strength and spirit. Faces brightened. Their hopes started to crystallize, forming a shimmering web of unity. Yes. We can do this. Cheered the elderly man, still at the podium. Others echoed his enthusiasm. As the crowd swelled with renewed energy, the angry man faltered. The embers of doubt began to dim, replaced by something more passionate, a hunger for change, for connection. Let us take this energy off the streets and into our homes, Ethan continued, feeling the pulse of the moment guide him. This isn't just a rally, it's a movement. We have stories to share, connections to build, and action to cultivate. We have to talk to one another, go beyond our differences and understand the roots of our struggles. As those words filled the air, a wave of agreement rolled through the crowd. People began to talk, to share their thoughts and fears, not just about their homes and livelihoods, but about the bonds they had yet to form. We can set up workshops, suggested the middle-aged woman. Community dinners where we open our homes to share stories. Yeah, shouted a teenager. What if we create a space for discussion in the local library? Invite people from both sides to talk. Ideas began to blossom, the once distant fear of failure transforming into plans that took shape before their eyes. Those in the crowd were no longer just faces in a battle, they were individuals with hopes, dreams, and voices ready to echo beyond the rally. They were empowered. They were unshakable. Ethan stood back, taking it all in. Their unity felt like a family pulling together after a storm, determined to rebuild and strengthen their roots. And he knew, even if there were hurdles ahead, they were now prepared to face them. Together, we are a force. He called out, raising his hands. Excitement thrummed through the crowd like an electric current. Let us not just fight for our homes, let us fight for each other. Let us carry these stories into our communities. As their chants returned, louder and fiercer than before, Ethan's heart swelled with pride and love for those around him. In that moment, as the sun hung low, glowing shades of orange and pink, he realized they were no longer just survivors. They were warriors. As the rally began to wind down, moving toward a tangible resolution infused with hope, Ethan couldn't help but smile, for he understood that this was bigger than any one person. It was a tapestry woven with dreams, struggles, and the unwavering belief that together, they could weather any storm. And in the depths of his heart, he knew they would rise stronger than ever. Ethan stepped back, watching the community gather and bond, radiant smiles warming what once felt like crushed spirits. The energy was palpable, an atmosphere buzzing with possibility and camaraderie. But this was just the beginning. If you love what you just witnessed, don't wait a single second longer, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Join us in building a community that stands strong and fights for what's right. You need to subscribe now.